Welcome to another episode of our Regenerative Future. My name is Chris Hovde, and in every episode, I invite inspiring guests who all have in common that they inspire us in moving beyond reducing the minuses and on to creating as many pluses as possible in the world. That's what a regenerative future is all about. And today's guest is Annicken, which is a best-selling author, keynote and TEDx speaker, and expert in workplace culture. And guess what? She has joy as her guiding star. So get ready for a joyful ride to the day. Welcome to the cast, Annick.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, like joyful. I look forward to experience that live as well. And just in that check-in before we started the recording, I could see that this is something that you truly aspire out in the world as well. But you're looking joyful, and it also looks like you're calling in from a joyful place. Can't you let us in where you are, and also how is the fall playing out for you?
Well, I am in Tuscany, so it is indeed a joyful place to be. In fact, I'm in the middle of Chianti, the wine district, so it's pretty strategic for someone who likes good wine, good food, happy times. But yeah, talking about the reason why I'm here is that I have my own business, so I can basically work from anywhere. And I always dreamt about living in Tuscany. And one day I just said, like, you know what, that one day, what if it never comes? We never know. So everything we talk about, like one day I want to do this, one way I dream about doing it, I'm just going to do it. So I just decided to move to Tuscany and I run my business from here and I write and I live life, la dolce vita, as we say in Italy. And the fall is exciting, lots of exciting projects, both in the business wise, but also artistic on my writing. And I also have a retreat coming up in a few weeks. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. We will hear more about all of that, but I know in the research I did that you're also writing on a new book, so maybe we're gonna touch a bit upon that. But I think there's good advices in what you're saying on the topic of regeneration as well. Follow your dream today, don't wait. Life is too short. And if you love wine, drink a lot of it. But how do you make sure to not drink too much wine or overdo the things that you love?
It's I usually say I like more to talk about drinking wine than to actually drink it. It's not like I don't drink wine, but I also know that if I drink wine to lunch, like a lot of Italians do, it's not a very productive day. So I try to avoid that unless there's a special occasion. But it's something about just being surrounded by, the soil and
Mm.
the vineyards and like the earth, everything. It just feels very alive to be here. So it's more like the environment than like the actual wine drinking that attracts me.
That's great to hear. That makes me a bit calmer. If we then move over into the topic of regeneration, what does that mean in your context and to you and the things that you do?
Well, I think thought of always trying to make something a bit better, try to inspire people, try to make them feel good. It's always been, an important driver in me. I feel it's my purpose. When people ask me why I do what I do, I always say, like, for me, the gift of seeing the light go on in someone's eyes, that is like the greatest thing I can experience. Because if it's something I said or something I did or something that, just gave them an experience or even a thought or idea that just made a difference to them. So for me, that is important personally to contribute to that, but also to help companies to create those kind of environments where people actually come to work and feel great about coming to work. Sometimes we talk about work as, you should try to, like Adam Grant used to say, try to make work not suck. And I was,
That's a low ambition.
I'm more ambitious than that. I say
Yeah,
like
yeah,
make
good to
work an
hear.
inspiring and joyful place to be. And there's so many reasons why that is a good idea.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I also started this podcast because I almost lost hope in the world and in life, and we're always constantly, and I've been D&I manager, sustainability manager, we're always talking about reducing the shit that we have enforced on the world
Mm.
instead of like how can we make thriving worlds, cultures, as many pluses as possible, and also talk more about the majority than only those few that are really unfortunate. Of course, we need to lift them as well. But if we always talk about the sad people that are depressed or killed or kind of in a bad mental health, there's still a large population that is healthy, thriving, and we need to make it good for both. And probably most efforts on the majority, as I learned when I grew up in IKEA as a workplace for 13 years, we always said kind of furniture for the masses, not only for the few. And that was a people policy as well. But before we jump into the amazing corporate cultures and what we can do to make them more thriving, I just want to get to know you a bit personally. What during your life has made you kind of into being so passionate about and have the super skills in lighting the fire in people's eyes, transforming corporate cultures? Like, where does that come from in your life?
It actually came from own experience of not having it.
Mm,
In the early 90s, I was traveling around Europe. I was working all different kinds of jobs. I was in restaurants and bars, and then I was a travel guide, and then I worked at hotels. And every time I had any kind of interaction with whoever was managing me, I remember feeling a bit like low and almost depressed because they were not caring. They were not caring about me or my colleagues at all. And I remember it was, oh, the boss is coming. Then we had to not be ourselves because he would not accept us as we were. But we also
mm,
knew that when you worked in the service industry, when we were happy and we were having fun, we gave much better customer service and our customers were much happier. So actually, when the bosses were around, the customers didn't get as great service as, when they were gone.
yeah.
So after a couple of years of this, it's made me reflect that why is it like that? Why are bosses, as we used to call them, or managers or leaders, why aren't they caring more about their people? Because if they care about us, we will do a better job. And that kind of led me to start studying this. Actually, I was fired from my job because I decided to coach my manager. This was in Stockholm in 93. And I told him that I think you should start treating us a bit better because then we would do a better job. And then I lost my job.
I actually did the same thing. And my manager asked me, so you think you can do this job better than me? And I said, yes, of course, that will be easy to
And I
do it
was
better than you.
like,
And I was like, she said, actually, you can't say that. Of course, I can't lie. Do you ask me to lie? I actually think so.
but that's
So that
exactly
was not a
right.
good thing to say, probably, but yeah.
No, but everything happens for a reason. It was a blessing in disguise, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what I thought, like, I can do this better. And then I didn't have an ambition of studying. I was like, I just want to have fun and live life and all that. Right? And then I was like, no. And okay, what do I need to study so I can become not the boss, but a leader,
Mm,
do what I haven't experienced myself. So that made me start studying, organizational and psychology and leadership and human resources at Stockholm University. And all through the studies, this was kind of what triggered me and interested me. And even had like debates with the professors because at that time in early 90s or mid 90s when I was studying, you know what? It was still the thought that you should treat people like machines. It was,
mm,
human resources like, okay, you do this input here and that output there. It was not about like human beings or emotions or what motivates people and all that. So that's when I decided after having studied and I was able to find some professors that actually agreed with me and could show me some studies that I might be onto something. It's ridiculous because everyone knows about this now, right? But 20 years ago, this was still kind of new. And that's what kind of triggered me to, okay, so I need to go out and test my theories myself and be that leader that I wanted to have myself. And that was
mm,
what started my career
cool.
in leadership roles myself, really, caring about people and making sure they were inspired and happy when they came to work. And they were
Yeah.
happier when they left work than they came to work. That was always, my ambition as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you asked a powerful question in telling that, and that was you met a lot of leaders that were almost an obstacle for their employees' joy and kind of performing well. Why is it so? What's the reason? Did you find anything?
Yeah, well, that still exists, by the way. That is not something that's
Yes,
only happened
absolutely.
then.
Yeah.
Yes, that still exists, but many aren't aware of it. Many leaders are not aware of the impact they're having on their people. And I think that is a challenge in itself. But the good news is that when they become aware, they can actually start doing something about it. But I still hear that a lot of places and people I talk to, that they don't feel that their leader actually care about them or are there to make them be better, but is there to control them and make their life miserable. That's like the emotion. I don't think the leader says, no, but today I'm going to make my people miserable. But he ends up doing that. But I think it is a lot about not being aware of it. And that is a lot of what I do when I speak at conferences and I coach leaders. I always talk about that, the shadow of the leader, that like
Yeah.
whatever you do is 10 times as strong as any other person in the company does that. So if you have a bad day and you're grumpy, you should know that the whole you're making a whole company feel bad as well and having a bad day. And that's a shock to many. So I think that's
Absolutely.
yeah.
But I think also a good advice that we started the story with, like, we should also all be responsible to tell our managers, to coach them, to give them feedback, because I find as a manager for 14 years myself as well, before I jumped into HR, that you don't get the full story and quite seldom. And then it's easy to see it afterwards, or maybe a couple of few people are the ones giving, but I would change a lot if I just only knew or got to hear it.
Yes.
So it's also kind of a dual responsibility, I think, to be radical honest, even though we both got fired for that. But starting a movement, and when it becomes natural, it's less dangerous also for the managers, and then probably we'll all stay and live happily ever after. But yeah.
Just a comment to that, because I usually use the word leading upwards, and I advise people that, and I agree with you. I think way too few people, they complain about their leaders, but they never give leaders that feedback. And I say they're also human beings, you know. They are. If they can't handle it, well, that's more their problem than your problem. Like I could get fired back in the 90s, but today you can't really fire someone for giving you feedback. But yeah, I think it's a very important point you're addressing.
And we also, before we put on the record button, we just also talked a bit about the constant change in the world. There's many companies that also run kind of quite heavy efficiency programs, kind of maybe setting ourselves up for the new kind of technology and AI and so on. It feels many times easy to build a thriving culture in growth phases, and when there's kind of a surplus of everything. But what's your advice to all the companies out there that are maybe scaling down, shaping up, or be more effective to be better for the future, to build a thriving corporate culture in that bit more tricky situation, maybe?
I think in those situations, you have to actually double down on that human aspect of the organization. Because I know some companies, or many companies, are pretty good at the people who's leaving the company and helping them and giving them a decent exit package or coaching or whatever, right? And then they forget about all those people who's left. And we talk about the different stages that we go through when it comes to change in organizations. And grief is actually a stage that it happens a lot when people like lose a colleague or there's a big change or a shift. And grief is not something that necessarily is talked about in the organization, because we talk about like the insecurities and the frustration and the fear and all that, right? But the grief of a change, that is something, and a lot of people get stuck in that if that's not addressed. So I used to say to leaders that now you really have to spend time with your people and talk about them and make them feel safe. And because again, when you see someone has to go, you yourself feel like next time it's me, which it might be, but it doesn't mean that people should walk around in fear like that. So I think, yeah, being extra conscious about taking care and talking, communicating with your people in that time.
Absolutely. And then I would also add to that, what has helped me is also I took a program that's called Neuroperspective on Change, and kind of how can you also take self-leadership, rewire your brain to see change as something positive and mitigate for all the fears we create in our own heads. And yeah, for me, that has kind of been on always making sure that I feel that I'm relevant to any job market, and kind of building my own company competence and skill set and so on. And also be in a company where I'm really safe, that they treat me well, either if I'm in or out. So I also have a good chance in the next play, if that's going to be the case any day. So like, even though I've been in my current company, Telia, for 8 years, and we do in technology many rounds on efficiencies and so on, I've never had that kind of fearful or being scared of being let go because we're as you say, so as so many companies does, take care of our people leaving as well as the ones who are internally staying. Good. I think that's a good balance and reminder that don't only take care of the ones who are leaving, and that's in the regeneration mindset, make the majority also really, really important. And then I think I want to tap into your book because
Oh,
that's called Fly Butterfly, which is at least intriguing to me. And you have it there, of course.
yes, of course.
Yes. And
Um,
like, can't you just tell us a bit about the concept and why the title and what is it all about?
Well, it was inspired by my years in corporate America. When the company I worked for, Thunberg, were acquired by Cisco, I worked a lot with the Silicon Valley team and all that. And also before I'd seen there was a lot of women in the workplace everywhere actually, but it became very visible for me in the US that I feel very pressured to kind of live up to the standards of the male population. You know, IT, 80% men. It's hard to be a woman and kind of climb the corporate ladder unless you kind of learn to play that game, the corporate game, so to speak. But I also see how that it's killing the souls of people, and they are
Mm,
miserable, and they're kind of trying to be something they're not. They don't want to be that, but they have to do that in order to survive in that environment. And some don't even know that they are kind of playing a game that's not aligned with who they are. But then maybe you come into a situation where you have to make a choice based on like who you are and what you believe in your values. And this is what happens. So I write about this woman called Maya Williams, and she's a New York businesswoman and climbing the corporate ladder and then being sent to Hawaii to speak at a conference and basically told to lie. And as she stands on stage, initially feeling comfortable about lying because it's only business, right?
mm,
Then realizing, well, it's not only business. It actually says a lot about me if I stand here and lie to all these people.
mm,
And they were like old people in the audience that might lose all their savings because had invested in her company. So basically, it's a story about like being on a track or on a path and you think it's right, and then you come into a situation where you have to meet yourself and your own kind of, yeah, your heart and your values, and decide who you want to be. And the consequences that comes after that. It's a bit like getting fired because you want to coach your leader. She speaks the truth from stage and loses her job. And the story is about her journey, reconnecting with who she really is, what she believes in, what is her purpose in life, what is her values, and redesigning her life based on
mm.
the real Maya, not the Maya she has been told to be and expected to be, but the Maya that really is. And what happens then when you show up in the corporate world authentically, unapologetically, and free? Because that's what she becomes. She becomes a free
Yeah,
person. And
yeah.
that is the butterfly analogy. It's the transformation of going from one way of being to become another way of being. And also it has a lot of like butterfly moments in the book as well. So
Cool. I feel like Maya actually, and that I've taken that butterfly journey, and I think a lot of more people than only women can relate. And I think it's to me and my experience only the fewest men that can play into the old grumpy stereotype and play that game
yeah,
because the world has opened up for so many new opportunities in the more modern world. So thank you for writing that, and I almost felt that I was Maya when you were
yes.
told talking about that story.
And that's the greatest compliment I get, because a lot of people who do read the book reach out to me and say, and that's not as many men, but quite a few men as well, saying just that I am Maya. And that gives me so much hope. And
Mm,
some of them, I am Maya, but I haven't gotten there yet. And some I'm in the middle of it, and
yeah,
some I've done it, but they kind of on that journey. But I think you need to be aware in order to see your resemblance with Maya. And obviously you are aware.
not always, but I think I've taken a quite of a journey in life, absolutely. And I know you're writing on a new book these days. Is Maya continuing somewhere, or is there anything new happening in that book?
Yes, it's actually a journey continuous, because the background for that was that I actually thought it's just going to end with one book. And then there were so many people who asked, but now, what happened then? And what about her? And then they started all this, and then,
Season two.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, new stories started spinning in my mind, like, oh, wow, yeah, oh, yeah, what did happen to that and all that. So then I kind of got on to the next one. And because there's a lot of things in the book that can, have deeper meanings. So it will be explored more. And, like you think sometimes it's a happy ending, but I'm not a cynical person, but I also say there's no happy ending as there's an end because life goes on and it's a roller coaster. Even though, something great happens, there will be some new challenges coming along. So, and I wanted to capture that as well.
Cool. Bit of taste, something to look forward to, it sounds like. So we will watch out that space. That's going to be cool. And then you had the seminar in Oslo, and unfortunately, I needed to work in my own corporate culture, and I missed that. But if you're going to kind of trickle it down a bit, what's your main concrete advices to corporation out there that will want to focus on creating a bit more pluses, more thriving cultures? What's the elements that you teach and educate corporations out there?
So based on the work that I did for 10 years in Tandberg and Cisco, building cultures in practice, global cultures, and testing I called it a little bit of playground. I got to test what works, what doesn't work. And then all this research that came, while I was testing and kind of confirmed the things that I learned. When I started my own company, Corporate Spring, in 2012, I realized in order for me to be able to explain both what I have done, but also what the science or research tells us like really works, I need to put it into some kind of model. So my team and I, we created what we call the Corporate Spring model. And this is the one we teached at the seminar in Oslo. And it's basically, if you think about Maslow's hierarchies of needs, where you have to have like the button is like physiological needs, the basics you just need to have in place in order to come to the top of self-actualization. For companies, organizations, or even teams, there are three things that are fundamental and needs to be in place. And that is that a team needs to have a purpose, a reason to exist. Why do you come to work in the morning? And then a sense of identity or sense of belonging and values like who we are, what we stand for, what we believe in. And then it's trust. So these three elements, that people know where they're there, they know who they're with, and they trust each other. That is absolutely fundamental to have, a good, healthy, high-performing culture. And then if you take it one step up the model, it's about how people think. Because one of the things, these three buttons, they takes time to develop, right? It is like a long-term view. The next building block.
I just wanted to kind of stop on that because I think that's so important and concrete because people expect that it kind of is done in a day or with an exercise. We work a lot with Susan Whelan's research on creating high-performing teams. And her research shows that it takes up to almost a year to create the fundament of a high-performing team and agreeing on these, aligning on these, creating trust, getting to know each other on a really deep personal level. So if we expect a change either in a leader or in a team tomorrow, you're going to be always unhappy because it takes a year with deliberate effort to build that fundament. So just wanted to double down on what you're saying there, that patience takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah.
My colleague, she says that and she's like a communication specialist, Audrey Kemp, and she says that in order for someone to really hear something, understand something, you have to say it 7 times.
Yeah.
And it's same with trust. You have to kind of talk. So trust is the one that I said is hardest to build and easiest to break, right? So you have to constantly work on those the trust elements and talking about that and addressing it. Like it's so important in order for people to really be aware of what breaks trust, what creates trust, and what breaks trust. Because sometimes we're not aware of it. What we do and how we say, how that actually impacts other people, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the two other elements, the next one is about mindsets. I talked about growth mindsets, and this is pretty amazing because this can be learned pretty quickly. This is when you learn how your brain kind of goes into that negative state very easily. This is where you can learn to kind of it's almost that little switch when you become aware of it. You can go from, call it the victim mindset, where you're blaming everyone and everything's a problem, to a player mindset where you're like, okay, so what can we do about it? How can I take responsibility? And that is a powerful thing to do. And this is what we train organizations and teams doing. And the top of the pyramid, of course, it's passion and joy. Joy is absolute top. And that has to do with when you see high performing organization, what is it they have in common? Well, they go into a task or to a project or come to work and their eyes are shining and they're willing
Mm.
to give it all and they're having fun doing it. And it's totally underestimated as a business strategy to create a passionate and joyful environment. And this
Yeah.
is where you see you become one of the organizations that have over 50% better performance when
Mm.
teams are at that level,
Yeah.
23% more profitable. There's so many studies that shows the effect of people being happy and
Yeah.
joyful at work.
Yeah. I call it energized, but
Yeah.
totally resonate with that. Like, and that the systems and the processes give energy and not kind of take energy. So
Mm.
being also mindful of the energy balance in both structure systems and how we interact with each other, I think is a really good advice.
I'm glad you actually
Absolutely.
mentioned
Yeah.
that, Chris, because we use this. If you think about yin yang, right? I always
Mm.
say culture and structure. These two
Mm.
need to be. I mean, they influence each other so much, but very often they can say like, "Oh, we want to have this. Okay, let's have a passionate and joyful culture." But then
Yeah.
you have a structure that does everything do the opposite, right? They
Yeah.
control people and they, don't reinforce the kind of culture you want to build. So I think this is
Absolutely.
what.
Yeah. And the more I work with cultures, almost lean more and more towards fix the system and the structures, and you will almost release the culture because, yes, you can have the mindset, but then many times it becomes so personal, dependent on the leaders who come in or go out. But if the structure is so kind of set in stone, anybody would need to kind of fuel into that established culture. So I think we underestimate the structure and the building blocks in a company that forces people into a certain structure as well, or culture.
I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of companies fail when they want to do like culture transformation or
Mm.
change all that. And then one big failure is that leaders say that the people under me are going to change. So then things going to be better. And my response is like, and first you will have to change because if you don't change, they won't change. So that's number one. And the other is that they kind of outsource it and let's say, oh, you're going to be running this, right? But finance or operations, oh, no, they have nothing to do with it. But they are kind of sitting there with the structure that is maybe, not really encouraging the kind of culture one builds. So everyone has to work together to make this happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it can start from anywhere. I like to say when we talk about culture at our house, I
Well,
would usually like to say that kind of you can either choose to be the culture that you want to see, or you can choose to kind of maintain the culture that you don't like
yeah.
today. So it's an active choice we take every single day in the end. So not wait for others or point to the top or point to anything. Be that change then. I think we could talk on for hours, but we're getting into some sort of a landing, and I would like to ask you a final question on we can then, of course, have a lot of passion in the world, as we said. We can coach people and get into difficult times because we're too vocal about things, and then we can work a lot to create thriving cultures. But then sometimes in between, we need a break to kind of get into our own thoughts again, center ourselves, and maybe just take care of ourselves a bit to be ready for the next time ahead. I know that you're also working with some retreats where you do different things so we can kind of become our best selves and jump on the horse again and be ready for the next chapter. Can you, as a final kind of gift to the audience, let us in a bit on those?
Absolutely. Because what I also see is out there in the work world, or the world in general, people don't take enough time to pause and reflect and, put a stick in the ground like, where am I in my life right now? Am I happy with this? Is this where I want to be? Am I in the right direction? I would just like running and running and running. And sometimes people don't even know why they are running or which direction they're running. So I want to create a space, people can come and actually take some time out and enjoy themselves, being in an environment that is inspiring and nurturing. And ask yourself those questions and basically doing the same as I do with the corporate, like what is my personal purpose? What are my
Mm.
personal values? What does self-trust, self-confidence mean to me? Because there are so many people who have dreams and ideas and they never they don't even know how to put them into life or where to start. So I want to create that place, right? And then I also always dreamt about finding like a retreat myself in Tuscany, but I didn't really want to go and do yoga. I like yoga, but I also want to have
Yeah.
wine, right? So I want to combine yoga and wine. I want to combine, just relaxing and having fun and just doing it in an environment with inspiring other people on kind of similar journey. So I call it the Chill Connect Create Camp. So it means like
Oh.
first you come and just chill and just have a good time and eat lots of good food and do yoga and then just have a good wine, of course. And then
Of course.
it is about connecting to yourself, right? Like having that real time connection and also other people who can ask you some good questions that makes you reflect to kind of come to an insight of who I am and where I want to go. And some people just realize I'm super happy with my life as it is. And that's a
Mm.
wonderful insight as well, right? But actually, most people realize, okay, they want to make some shifts. And then the third part is create, which is like, okay, what can you do when you come home? Because I want people to leave the retreat not only relaxed and rejuvenated and happy and all that. I also want them to kind of leave with a plan or like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, just so they kind of can have a momentum, not only
Mm.
as a nice memory, but that this was a starting point for something new. And that's how it's
Great.
turned out to be for a lot of
Yeah.
people. So I'm very excited.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
I have a new one in just a few weeks. Maybe you'll come, Chris. That would be
Yeah,
fun.
it sounds very promising and interesting. Absolutely. I had a bit of too long of a summer vacation, so I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do another one, but I'll keep that in mind for sure. And I love how concrete it becomes, like that you end up in more of an almost like an action plan for your next steps.
Hmm.
Because I find many retreats are just like almost like a break and then you jump on the horse again and you need a break again and so on. But like
Yeah.
more concrete and life changing and as a first step in something because it's a
Hmm.
lifelong journey.
Exactly.
I was curious almost to end on like something provoking. What could you say to people out there that could get you fired today? What's something that you would kind of like to say as we started with? You also like to provoke a bit and be a bit in front of things. What could you say to get yourself
To get
fired
like
from your own company?
if it's in front of a company or people or even people come to my treat, yes, I do like to provoke because I think we need to be honest with each other. And I think there's way too many people who walk around and living a disempowered life and spending a lot of energy on everything that's wrong in the world, everything's wrong with other
Mhm.
people, and just pointing fingers. And I would just suggest to start pointing fingers at yourself. You have one finger outwards and three at yourself and take ownership for your life and for your job and for your career or for your happiness, anything, because like no one is here to make you happy. You're here to make yourself happy.
I love that.
So go on and just make a happy life. That's and it's very provoking for some people because it's not that easy. And I say, yes, it is because happiness. So studies show that happiness is 10% about external circumstances and 90% about the way you think.
Yeah.
So if you just decide to start focusing on those positive thoughts, you will automatically be happier.
I love that. That's a good ending. And as I like to say usually is don't be sorry, just be better. I think that's a good way to end today's cast. Thank you so much for joining us, Annicken, and was
Thank you.
really a joy, a full ride to
Yes.
talk to you today. I wish you all the best with your endeavors into the future.
Thank you so much, Chris. See you soon.
Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners to the cast The Regenerative Future, where we every week invite inspiring guests who all contribute to create as many pluses as possible so we all can live better and more fulfilling lives. Until next time, wish you a regenerative week ahead. See you and goodbye.